Hello and welcome. You're watching Newsx. I'm Rishabh Gulati. We have accepted one thing now as this community of fellow citizens, that the era of incremental, organic change must now close and bring forth transformative and exponential growth. The question then begets us is, how will this happen? We've had so many conversations, so many thoughts, so many policies, perusals on various aspects of getting India to where we all know it should belong. We have the genius in terms of human enterprise. We have one of the world's biggest markets. We are positioned, we are young, and we are growing. These have been conversation topics for much too long. They now need to be actualized. Actionable things now need to take place. And one of the actionable things that we've been tracking, it's been made headline news for the past couple of years, has been what opportunity is being given to wealth creators, business people in this country to start and run businesses. And you now know that India's ease of doing business index rankings globally have been improving, not organically, but leapfrogging year on year. So something has been done right, but obviously a lot more is required. We can't sit on it. We have to act upon it. To have this conversation with us in this special telecast, which we put together in association with ASSOCHAM, are the people who are deeply involved in this process on all sides of the table. Let me introduce them. Shri Tanmoy Chakrabarty, Group Government Affairs Officer at Tata Sons, is on the broadcast with us. Dr. Lovneesh Chanana, Vice President, Government Affairs, Asia Pacific and Japan of SAP. Dr. Jaijit Bhattacharya, President, Center for Digital Economy Policy Research. Shri Suman Jyoti Khaitan, Founder and Managing Partner of Suman Khaitan and Company. And Shri Dushyant Thakor, Vice President of Invest India, one of the leading organizations that have been put together to serve this very important purpose at the central level. Tanmoy ji, if I can begin with you, and the most basic and straightforward question that I can think of, sir. Can you help us understand what does a company really practically need for us to say that it's become easier or to make it easier for them to do business?
So thank you, Rishabh, for having me on this panel. It has been a tremendously evolutionary journey since 2005, when I had the proud privilege to be associated with the National E-Governance Plan first mission mode project for the Ministry of Corporate Affairs called MCA 21, which we executed at that time. And a lot has happened since then, as you had alluded to in the opening. However, just like technology provides a continuously evolutionary improvement process and journey, I believe that the processes and rules and laws also need to evolve and mature. And that's the journey that I think every new entrepreneur looks forward to, is in the process of simplification of their ability to register a startup enterprise as touchless as possible without having to run from pillar to post, as digital as possible, not just on the front end, but right through. And I want to introduce a concept called straight through processing, which is touchless, digital, right until it comes back as a feedback action from the government back to the entrepreneur. So if you're asking me, what does a startup entrepreneur look for in starting up the business? He or she wants to focus on the energy, on generating revenue from the idea that is getting them to form up the company. They want to put their maximum energies on ensuring that it is a viable business. And they want an enabling environment, a catalytically enabling environment across compliance, across statutory provisions and responses, so that they can really get a very, very positive opportunity to grow, and their growth means the growth of the country.
Okay, with the cogent self-belief for all of us that this can be done. Dushyant Thakurji, let me get you into this conversation. Where does,
Yes.
if we trace a genesis, we've been talking about this for a long period of time. It's been a desirable goal for a long period of time, but there was a business reform action plan of 2014 that's given us a baseline that we can, base our present conversation on. Can you help us understand that?
Sure. So let me break this down into two aspects. And since you mentioned the word transformational and incremental, probably let me just zoom back to 5 years. Let's pick up that period, and then I'll later on talk very quickly about the last 5 months of some transformational and incremental ideas which have taken place. So going back to it was actually 29th December 2014 when the first Make in India workshop was conducted, and that's where Jaijit had been a part of that, and that's where the whole thought process of ease of doing business as one of the key pillars of Make in India came in. And it was in that meeting when this whole thought process behind the business reform action plan came in. It's been 5 years since then. I think there's a whole lot of stuff which has happened from a point where I remember at that time it was very difficult to even inform an investor that what are these steps and the clearances and how much time it would take. Today you can very clearly tell them that these are the, let's say, 8 steps required, and this is the exact amount of time. It's pretty much all there on their websites. More than 20 states have got their single window systems which are already in place, and various areas, inspection and other areas are where there's a lot of other reforms which are happening. The current status, again, things like from state it's moving on to district. There are district reform action plans which are there. The whole exercise is now being made more feedback based. So let's hear right from the investor, what do they feel about it? On the central ministries front, again, Tanmoy is there, somebody who we respect a lot, also being from the IT field. But we know today where MCA is, with the Spice Plus form, 10 services coming through a single form. I think it's remarkable what has happened. Areas like, insolvency, where, the whole time period really has gone down from something like 4.3 years to 1.6 years into 19, and various areas, within the central government. Moving on, and then the third point I wanted to talk about was us, Invest India, which is the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency. It was around that time, 2014-15, where we actually became actionable. We have 2 clear goals, being the voice of the investor and grounding of investments. And that's where, we holding investors at every step of this cycle. One specific thing which I'm personally involved in is getting the best possible investment teams created in each of the states. So that's one thing. I'll just very quickly come back to now, the whole transformation. What has happened in these 5 months? I'll give 5 quick examples. Very clearly, this year's EODB is also focusing a lot on specific sectors. It was earlier more generic, but now you're getting into things like healthcare, hospitality, telecom, tourism, these sort of areas coming in. Very interestingly, ease of doing business is also being linked with the increase in state government's borrowing limits. That's very interesting. That's the second thing which has happened. And I can see a lot of action getting initiated from the northeastern states on that front. The states have done very interesting stuff. Very recently, we heard of the ordinance from Karnataka and Mahaparwana from Maharashtra. Again, fairly interesting things. 2 very crisp recent things, these are all developments from June, is the setting up of project development cells in 28 ministries of central government. Each of them headed by a joint secretary and also an empowered group of secretaries. The DPIT is kickstarting a huge project on compliance. I'll just stop there, but I'll sort of
we'll come back, because Mr. Thakor will come back and pick on all of these points with you. But let's get Dr. Chanana into this conversation. Dr. Chanana, when we are talking about ease of doing business, one is ease of doing business at the large corporate level, right? And one is the very practical ease of doing business of small businesses where, compliance, and you don't have separate departments and legal advisors and, company secretaries and chartered accountants, team of them working on it. What does it really mean for a small business? What do smaller business really need to make their life easier?
Thank you, Rishabh. If I break this into why in the world should we even talk specifically separately about the ease of business, which is critical for SMEs. We need to link it to the contribution of SMEs to India's ambitions. And if you look at the or report of the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, there are as many as 63 million SMEs and generating 11 crore jobs. Now, given that scenario, every topic that we talk about growth, is incomplete without SMEs. And mind you, 51% of these, as per them, are actually rural. And when we talk of areas that we focus when we speak of ease of doing business, whether it's starting the business or whether it's getting business approvals, electricity connections, land, environment, labor, etc., etc. For a large enterprise, they have the big pockets, they have the wherewithal and the resources to afford. For small enterprises, it becomes all the more important. And I believe there are two broad areas that we need to handle when it comes to small businesses. One is the whole issue of awareness, right? So when it comes to SMEs or when it comes to small business, the whole awareness about the reforms, about the compliance requirements, is something that we need to address. And this awareness can come both through a pull or a push approach. A pull approach could be moment I provide global market access to Indian SMEs, a comparative awareness of the regulations which probably are somewhere better would definitely push for a greater demand in-house. Second is the kind of push approach wherein I can talk of awareness toolkits for SMEs and all. Now, if you see government, a number of initiatives have been taken. The latest being the Champion program launched by the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, whether it's the Udyam or Sampark or some number of initiatives on industry's part. There have been equal initiatives. Look at us as SAP. We have initiated this program called Global Bharat. We are targeting global market access for SMEs. We're also giving, a focus on skilling and most importantly, providing a technology base which is affordable and access to low-cost solution. So things are moving, Rishabh, and hopefully we will see a scenario wherein my SMEs will now start on the foundational layer that we have already laid so beautifully to actually raise up and take advantage.
Okay, so hope is there, but then there's pragmatism and about what needs to get done. I don't think none of us have given up. So this is about what needs to get done. And I'll come and pick your mind on that in just a bit, sir. Dr. Jaijit Bhattacharya, when we are talking about compliance and rules, number one is for somebody to know what the compliance and rules required are. So if you want to start up a company or start up another ancillary, is it easy to get information on what all you're supposed to do?
Absolutely no. Actually, the answer is no, and the devil lies in the details on everything that we are saying. So huge steps have been taken in the last 5 years. There is no doubt about it. It's been transformational steps, and nobody can ever argue against that. But there's a lot more to be done, especially when we're talking about smaller firms. If we look at just the issue of, if I ask a question, what are the rules to be followed if you've got more than 10 employees? How many of us can answer that? If you look at the panel today, all of us represent big industries. All of us represent, industry associations such as ASSOCHAM, which are doing an excellent job of putting up what are the issues that are to be faced by large companies. But what about the small companies? How do I know that I'm not violating a law of the land? I want to set up a business which is aligned to the law of the land, but I don't even know the law of the land. How do I know when to file GST? How do I know when to file reverse GST? When to file TDS? When to pay the taxes? When to pay the penalty? When to file the MBT1 form, the DPD3 form, the DIN form, and so on and so forth? It just becomes endless. Now, for a small entity and a startup and an MSME, it gets extremely difficult to be able to focus on the compliances while also running the business, because the same person is doing it. It's a CEO who's running business, getting sales, hiring people, getting loan, paying taxes, doing the compliances, and it becomes absolutely difficult. In fact, there are solutions that were being promoted for the last 2 decades. Tanmoy mentioned eBiz as something that was introduced. In fact, I was personally working on it in 2001 as part of IBM Research Lab, and we still don't have it on the ground. Because the issue is not technology, the issue is actually change of processes, change of systems. And and technology is only 5% of this entire game.
Okay.
How do you align the municipality, which is the local government and the state government and the central government, to all come onto a single platform called, let's say, eBase, where you can then start doing all of these transactions, which will then tell you what are the rules to be followed, and only then can we have a true ease of doing business coming in. The problem is that we've got a fractured mechanism of governance. The central government actually does not have any oversight over the state governments or the municipality, and that's why when under the leadership of Mr. Amitabh Kant in the year 2014, when we started constructing the ease of doing business for the state governments, what we first said is that there should be a mechanism by which, an innovative mechanism by which the federal government should be able to push the state governments to these reforms, and which is what I used to call as gamification at that point in time. It's now called comparative federalism, because it's essentially gamification. Now, given these challenges, it gets extremely difficult to have a system wherein you really bring in the ease of doing business without the states and the local government and the central governments aligning with each other.
Okay, well,
and that's the challenge that we face. Let me take a small little example. If you are manufacturing fashion buttons and you want to provide it as a demo to a foreigner who's walking in, who wants to buy some of these buttons and import it subsequently and just buy it as a demo. If you take the $50 or the $10 for that amount, for those buttons that are being produced, you end up violating FEMA. And now for that person to go through the FEMA rules, that person will basically take the next flight to Dhaka, go to Bangladesh and get those buttons in and walk away from India. And that's the problem that we're talking about.
Okay, very practical example, and let's pick up on this. But Suman ji, when we are talking about simplifying procedures and rules, what does that actually mean in practice? In theory, it makes a lot of sense, but in practice, what does it mean on the kind of examples that Jaijit ji has just shared?
Well, let me give you some practical examples, because as was pointed out, although we represent big industries, but we also represent small industries, and we are aware of the problems. I've been also president of PhD chamber. I appreciate the problems. Now, I do not want to criticize anybody. I'm sure the government and the bureaucrats are all acting in the right spirit. But somewhere there seems to be a big gap, maybe because of intention and actual implementation. Take the New Companies Act. It was supposed to be a watershed, and to a some extent it is. But if you see now, even for audit standards, today under the Companies Act, you have two bodies. One, you have central government, then you have the Institute of Chartered Accountants. Now, why do you need two bodies for this? Is it called ease of doing business? Previously, for having a board meeting and doing the drafting of minutes, Companies Act and the rules were deemed sufficient. Now you have the Institute of Company Secretaries who gives guidelines, and that has become statutory mandatory. You have to make the draft minutes in 7 days. You have to circulate it another 7 days. Now, why do you need this? In many large companies, I can understand the need to have committees like audit committee, stakeholders committee, nomination, and other committees. But why do you need each and every board? After all, these committees are only constituents of the board. Why do you need 5 committees, let me tell you? One former cabinet secretary, I think he wrote in a book that there is a difference between, say, appearance of justice and actual justice. And today everybody is hell-bent on creating an appearance of doing an ease of business without looking to the reality. Today you see the law. No lawyer can really advise you correctly without going to the website and seeing what is the law as of today. Because most laws are today delegated legislation. The central government, the bureaucrats have been delegated powers to frame new laws at almost the press of a button. So whether it's income tax, whether it's company law, whether it's partnership law, whether it's a customs law, the law is changing almost every day. You see the number of notifications and circulars which are coming out. Now, why do you need this uncertainty in the law and the huge number of compliance? Take another example, which is of software. Software is very good. Filing on computer is very good. But today, what the problem is, your form is dictating the law. Many times your form may not be strictly in accordance with law. Maybe the law gives you a flexibility which has been forgotten to be put into the form. So what do? These are very big practical problems for which no flexibility has been inbuilt in the system.
Okay, so I think...
Now, what is the change in the mindset? My mindset is many of these regulations would be okay for a large company, for a multinational company, but not in the size of the company which is dominantly present in our country. Therefore, you exclude them from these laws.
Okay.
The job and task of an entrepreneur and a businessman is to run his business.
Okay.
It is not to interact.
Okay, I'm sorry to interject here, sir, but I'm just going to boil it down. I'm just going to boil it down to the conversation that we've already had to set this up. So where do we stand? First we need clarity and ease of access to that clarity on what is it that you're supposed to be doing. Number two, what you're supposed to be doing, once you do it, it should not change every few days. Number three, your compliance with what you're supposed to be doing should not be taking more time than you actually running the company and turning a revenue. And number four, when everything that you're supposed to be doing is open to interpretation after you started doing it, and then that is dependent on individualistic opinion, how do we get past that? Let's put this thought together. Tanmoy, Chakrabarty, we have been talking, let's talk headline, okay, single window clearance as an approach. Now, single window clearance as an approach begins that we have created a single window, but once we get past the single window, it's still 40 other windows. How do we get past that?
See, Rishabh, the pragmatic scenario as it is on the ground today, and we have to be realistic here, is that we are navigating between a central, state and concurrent list jurisdictional environment.
Correct.
And in that situation, why, and this is the biggest dichotomy of it all, the epitome and the basic of technology is that you can leverage from technology and everybody can, benefit from it. I mean, all of us are on WhatsApp, all of us are on Zoom. It is one single technology platform. But unlike that, if you look at our historic construct of government, it has been traditionally extremely siloed. We have a central government, we have a state government, and we have a local government. And everybody has jurisdiction.
Okay, so what is possible, sir? I mean, you've been doing this for a long period of time, very, very deeply involved in it. What is possible?
Yes.
What are there some, low-hanging fruits here?
Definitely there is, and it is evolving, as you can see, that we've had arithmetical improvement over a period of time. There is collaborative technology usage now percolating inside government. Some of those jurisdictional walls, whilst they remain, are being kind of narrowed or thinned.
Okay, so this pass in the parcel that you go to, the center wants a single point of entry, but you go there and then when you actually need to get the land, it's the state thing, needs to be figured out. Several people want to come in, then I want to open Dushyant also. Jaijit, go ahead, then I'll get in Dr. Chanana. Yeah. Jaijit, go ahead.
The way we are looking at technology is that technology will simply replicate what we're doing in real life. So if you're filling up 20 forms, in a way we have to fill up the same forms in technology, and that's what Suman, Jyoti, Khaitan was talking about. That you then create a structure which is extremely rigid. On the other hand, technology actually provides a huge amount of flexibility. If I just look at GST as an example, why can't I have a government invoicing system where I put in the invoices and then whatever GST has to be done, GSTR 3B, 1A, whatever, will be done by that system from there onwards as per whatever rules the government puts in and as per whatever changes in rules the government puts in. Let the government take care of that system. The rules are built by the government, and therefore the system should also be built by the government.
No, explain that to a lady. You are saying I type in the GST details, and whether the form changes from 1% or 3% or 18% or the rules change, the automatic computation is done and I'm given an end result.
Absolutely. I get an invoicing system. I use an invoicing system wherein I get the APIs from the government and I can use anybody's invoicing system, but in the back end is a government system. Okay. And that's what really leads to a central information coming in, a central point of truth, rather than replicating things again and again. For example, when the government asks me anything, typically those questions are related to what the government already has. My PAN card, my Aadhaar card, my passport number, and so on and so forth. Most of this information the government already has.
If I'm giving them my GST information anyway, why are you asking me to compute everything after you change a rule? Compute it yourself. Right. Let me know, and if I have an objection or clarification, then let me seek it off you and then answer it. Dr. Chanana, go ahead.
Richard, I have a slightly different, ideally I believe there should be no window at all. we should be we should be able to file from anywhere, anywhere. But given that we are evolving into the journey and we are now coming to a single window
No, but so when you say no window at all, what is the ideal there? Should I be able to go to my Barsati and start a company without having to call up anyone?
No, I'm not saying that.
I would love to.
Say for example, when I'm filing something on the NCA, I don't go anywhere. I just file from my home and it gets processed and I get an acknowledgement. So that's the virtual window that I have. And the single window could be physical, single window could be. The important point, Rishabh, is what happens after I have filed. And that's the difference between the interfacing between the different activities, what happen at the back end, and the integration between those activities.
Okay, so what's the X factor facing? No, why don't you tell us what happens after you file? Why don't you help us understand that? What happens after you file?
So if ideally in an ideal situation, Rishabh, I should have one application for everything. Yeah. That's a dream. But that doesn't happen. I currently file multiple organizations, multiple applications, multiple forms, multiple things, just to satisfy the requirements of various parts of the compliance requirements that I have.
Okay, so simplify this for a lay viewer, sir. So let's say you're going to the single window and you require 10 permissions and 10 compliances, right? Does that system need to then solve all of those problems rather than simply instruct you to where to next go in the next step?
So let me take just one example, Rishabh. The data capture. Why should I fill the same data in 10 forms? If I have a single source of data capture, everybody can use that. If I have an enterprise-wide system, I capture once and then it becomes automatic for me. That's simply...
No, we have great examples of that, and I know Dushyant Thakor is living and breathing this, so he's itching to come in on it. But we have great examples. I'll get Dushyant, let me just give our viewers some great examples. You have the UPI system, right? I mean, that's become like that. It's become something that has evolved very, very quickly. I can tell you my personal experience. Last time getting a passport made, I couldn't believe how easy it was. It was impossible. 10 years ago, you literally had to call up some raw officer to get out of this country. You walked in, walked out, technologically very, very sound. But then consequently, and this was a conversation I had with you guys earlier, filing for a voter ID, I got an email, you have been rejected. And I don't know what that means, and I don't know where to go to follow up. Dushyant Thakor, a lot of people have raised a lot of points. Jump in.
Yes, I'm going to actually stitch together quite a few of them. And starting with your example of Barsati, wanting to set up. And I just want to sort of talk about, what is the thought process which is also going on in the minds of state. I'll just, maybe reverse back to 2019. And through that year, at least 3 to 4 states brought out, the MSME Facilitation Acts. And what it said was that, you just give us a simple declaration of intent, and then you take us an acknowledgement certificate, which gives you, 2-3 years time, and you go ahead and start your work. Just comply with whatever is the basic thing. It's sort more or less equivalent to a self-certification. Now, an example in point, and this is something which I was discussing with Kerala yesterday, they've got in the last 8 months, 4,500 such applications. Turning to Jaijit's point on, and I just want to reflect a little bit on the single window, because that's a project and it's a crazy project, but I'm very, very happy to be a part of it. We did talk about, what is it? What is lying out there? As an investor, when I come in and I say I want to set up, let's say, a mobile phone handset manufacturing unit, what are my step-by-step clearances? Now, as a part of the national single window, and I'm a part of that project now, what we are doing is a national know your clearances module. Okay. So at least in the pre-operation stage, step-by-step, what are the exact clearances, both from a center and a state?
Explain the model. Do I come to Invest India? Do I come to a portal, a website, or do I hire a consultant to know these things?
No, what you do is you come to a website which will be live mid of April onwards, 2021. You go to that website, you say, I want to, set up my company. We will fire a series of questions in front of you. What is the business that you want to get into, maybe a little bit about your subsector, which state are you wanting to get in, and then, a little bit of your utility requirements. And a lot of these questions are actually, while we are presenting it, the questions are coming through the states. We've given each state a locker and a key to that locker. They open the locker, they put their rules there. So as an investor, for me, it's a single interface, series of questions.
Okay, so I can tell state by state, and now we need to, like, if I come there once and with the same set of information, I shouldn't come there 10 times. Jaijit, I see you, and I want to get Sumanji also in this. But Tanmoyji, for people watching this broadcast, right, there is a headline figure, and we have done wonders. So a lot of work has gone done, and the very fact that something like Invest India exists to do this, and Dushyant is willing to sit with us and take the criticism, is a great sign. But there are lots of areas, Tanmoyji, in the ease of doing business index where we are not in the top 100. What can we still do? How sensitive are these areas?
I think if you look at the recently published Doing Business in the Country report, Ease of Doing Business report of the World Bank, we need to focus on the 4-5 areas where we are above 100 in that list. I think we need to prioritize because those actually touch the core of a business enterprise in the country. So those are the areas that I think we need to focus on. We have come a long way, but there's lots more to do. And I think the focus has to really now come down to the local government layer, where all over the country we have differing service levels of service delivery to the end entrepreneurs.
Right.
That's the area of focus. Can technology bring...
So give me an example, Tanmoy Chakrabarty. When you say local government, what? Is that okay? I've got clearance from some center, but when I actually go to take over my land, the DM shows up.
Yes, I'm talking about the last mile, which is the municipal corporation. For example, Gujarat, Odisha have created an e-municipality platform, which is a digital platform, which is one single IT platform serving multiple municipalities.
Right.
Thereby giving everybody an opportunity to bring a common service delivery standard and a process to be able to deliver services at a certain predictable kind of a turnaround
and actually
time
become cooperative in wanting to deliver the services rather than a favor is being done to you kind of logic approach.
India is a land of 5,500 municipal corporations. By when are we going to reach the last municipal corporation?
We'll talk on this.
Consistent service level.
Let's come back and talk on this. The larger this capacity of this whole of government model that we've been talking about earlier. Sumanji, let me bring you in this.
Yeah.
One is the process. We talked about single window clearance as a process, and I'll come back and refer to it before we wind up to the telecast. But once the process is gone and done and dusted, and you implement it on the ground, somebody has to actually fix the water connection, the gas connection, the power connection, hand over the land, put you in the appropriate government records, and when they come to do an inspection, not to tell you that, okay, here are 10 rules or 20 rules you violated, please shut down and come back after a month. How do we get to that area at the local level, state level?
You see, one way is to follow the example of the RTI Act. The RTI Act is a success because if the officer does not respond within a certain time, a penalty can be imposed upon him. So even in all these clearances, the 5,500 municipal corporations which we are talking about, number one, have a blockchain linkage with them. Number two, have fixed timelines with fixed responsibility. That once you have got the clearance, if a certain officer does not respond within a certain time with a valid reason, then just like RTI, he should be penalized.
Okay.
Because he is endangering not just one project, but also the future of the country.
Okay.
If this accountability is fixed, that's the only way we can get out of this.
Okay, so there is, if I say incentivization, you'll say that, I'm encouraging corruption, but there has to be a both way process. Dr. Lovneesh, in an approach where we want government and corporates, I'm not talking about PPP, I'm talking about literally if you want to start up a business, you want your local DM and your Jal board and your gas board and your power supplier and your municipal corporation guy to help you. That is not, it's not that puzzle piece is not fitting together right now. How can we make it better, sir?
There are 2-3 ways that I can think of. One obviously is a whole technology-led approach wherein this becomes a what's in it for me for the department to department. Moment I have access to your data and I'm actually contributing to this, then you and me are actually in a forced collaboration or a contribution mode. That's one. Second, obviously, is a top-down approach wherein some places you will see an integration layer that gets structurally facilitation layer that gets structurally
No, give me
built.
examples. Lovneesh, help us understand. I buy a washing machine of an e-commerce player, and the day it is delivered, my request for installation is automatically filed by the with the agency that is branded by it. They automatically file it with the local guy. He calls up and shows. I mean, these are processes, technological processes. Can we do this?
Exactly. So that's where the whole concept of industry-government collaboration actually is bringing in. And as we move forward, Rishabh, we will only see that increasing. And many countries, if you see, they have actually chosen to put these.
So where do we, Lovneesh, where do we reach where we actually go to that single window at the central level, and 2 days later we get a call from somebody at the state level or district level that, oh, your application has already reached us. How can we help?
Yeah, so today, if you say that, Rishabh, somebody may say you are dreaming, but then that is the ideal situation, and one day it will happen. Everybody is hopeful.
No, it's happening fast. Today, private agencies, KYC used to be an impossible process with banks. I don't know how many forms you had to fill. Today, I'm told it can be done on a video call with OTPs, and you send your Aadhaar and take your selfie and do it. Several people want to make interjections. Jaijit ji, then Dushyant ji. Jaijit, go ahead.
No, multiple points. I think, as you rightly said, the state governments are actually moving down the path where they are chasing you up. So a good example is Punjab government. You go and file your application on the single window system. They will actually keep calling you up. Every 15 days, 20 days, they'll call you up to make sure that the next stage of your application is done. Now, the problem with the other systems that we just discussed a little while ago in terms of why can't we have self-certification? Well, we can have self-certification. The problem is that post that, if the government officials come back and say that your self-certification is not valid for whatever reason, your entire investment goes down the drain. So there's a Damocles sword hanging on your head. The second issue is that if we go through penalizing each of the officials after a certain period of time, if there are 4 officials, we give them 3 months each, it's 1 year gone. And the moment you start investing, your meter is down because you have taken loan, and your loan, your interest component of loan keeps ramping up.
Okay.
So you will come to some kind of a compromise. And therefore, these are the issues that start getting into the actual problem.
This is the headache that Invest India has been set up to help us solve, and I believe you guys are doing it, Dushyant, at the state level also, at least giving them models that they can work on. Where do we reach a point where if we want to make an investment and build businesses in this country, officials are actually following up with us that, sir, aapka investment kyun nahi aaya? Why has it not come?
Sure. So let me just take a couple of minutes and stitch a few thoughts together. One is I also want to acknowledge, the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, our parent body, my salaries come from there. So, they're doing an amazing job. They're the ones who are sort of really driving a lot of these things. Now, there are, Jaijit gave a really good example of Punjab. There's a lot of proactiveness, a state wanting to do it. So what I would say is that, it really comes out as a good combination of push and pull. States really proactively wanting to do it, and then you also try and imbibe. So, so cooperative federalism, as what Jaijit talked about, worked, the whole ranking thing. Interestingly, this recent thing which has been done, which is, the increase in state government's borrowing limit, which has come in, and, it connects with 0.25%, I believe. And there are 3 aspects which are being brought in. And why I want to pick up this example is because, it'll answer a lot of different points which are getting raised. First parameter, what they talk about is basically district level reforms. So there are around, I believe, 45 reforms. We are talking about construction permits, land use, and bringing all of them onto an ICT platform at a district level. So a state does it, and we are talking about even the Northeastern and everybody. This is a pot of gold. It's not a rank number 1, 2, 3, 4. It is actually a pot of gold that you have to go after. You can't, you need that extra money, especially in the COVID time. 1. Number 2, auto renewal or, elimination of requirements of renewals of certificates, approvals, licenses. We are talking about things like, Shops and Establishment Act. We are talking about Contracts Labor Act. Some such, maybe I believe it's around 10 such acts which are there, where they are saying that, okay, you bring these in, you bring in the auto renewals, or you just take a small fees or whatever, and you just give this, lifeline further to the business. So that's an interesting. The third one is, and I'm sorry, I'll just take a minute more, is on the the computerized central random inspection system. So, so while we talked about, some states, their MSE thing talking about no inspections, but also, and we have some great examples. Maybe later on I can probably.
Okay, I think maybe we need to have 4 or 5 hour conversation. It's not going to be enough. Several people want to come in. Tanmoy ji, make your interjection, so then I have a question also. Tanmoy ji, go ahead.
No, very quickly, I think, time has come in India after 75 years that we need to find ease of doing business where it is easy to do the business. There is need for us to decongest. We cannot be cramping more and more stuff into places where it is difficult to do the business. So I was very encouraged to hear from Dushyant when he talked about the Northeast and other districts which are hitherto not overcrowded and not packed, and therefore it will be much easier to do business in those places.
Okay, but I have to ask you, Tanmoy ji, and you take our lead in this. When we've been talking about, technology as not being everything, but maybe 10%, 20% of the solution, implementing that is requiring what?
Rishabh, technology is only a catalytic enabler. The real drive is what is the will of the government and of the other stakeholders to do and bring the change. That really drives transformation. So I think we are talking about moving from a highly siloed governmental jurisdictional environment to a joined up government possibility which presents itself as an opportunity by use of technology.
Okay.
So that is the transitional phase that we are in.
Okay, so the technology is the way of functioning, but it does provide certain things as possible. Lovneesh ji wants to make an interjection, so does Jaijit. Lovneesh ji, go ahead.
So, that excellent point made by Tanmoy, and I think technology also provides us another opportunity of what Dushyant mentioned in terms of a district level solution, which will be a single, source of truth and source of access. I think what we also need to now institutionalize, Rishabh, is the replication of this solution rather than reinvention of wheel by everybody. So everybody going with same.
No, explain that. You are saying every department, every agency, every state wants their own ICT setup. When we should have, I won't say one size fits all, but there should be something that makes sense to everyone.
Exactly. So if I institutionalize the replication of experiences, I will learn from X district and then modify that to slightly my requirements, but I will not reinvent the wheel. Every time I reinvent the wheel, I reinvent the wheel differently.
So we need a governance hub where we can let people, DMs also, all their AI and data crunching that we're talking about, let them get them, na? That you guys, your neighboring district has gone up in 14% in terms of its water this year. What are you doing? Kind of logic. Jaijit, make the interjection, and I want to rope in Suman ji also. Jaijit.
So two quick points actually. One, starting with Invest India. They are the red carpet that is rolled out for all investments that's coming into India, and they have done a fantastic job. It's probably one of the best investment promotion bodies in the world, and that's.
No, I know a lot of people there, all good people doing great work, without a doubt.
Yeah, but the unfortunate part is that Invest India is not the government. And that's where the problem starts, that once the red carpet has been rolled out, the red carpet doesn't stay once you have already made the investments. And therefore, if you want to go back and challenge something that the local officials are doing, it gets very difficult for you to do that, which brings me to the point of contract enforcement. So although we are 63 in ranking, in World Bank EODB ranking, the ease of doing business ranking, we're actually 163 in terms of contract enforcement. In fact, 5 years ago, we were 184 out of 185 in terms of contract enforcement.
Okay. Since you mentioned it, let me get Suman ji on that point. Suman ji, are we talking about backlog issues, or are we simply need to simplify contract enforcement? That if somebody has a dispute, that the local official, once a ruling is passed, can actually go get it implemented. Here, things just get locked up and the keys get thrown away for many years. Sumanji.
See, when you talk of contract enforcement, you actually thinking of judicial reforms, for which you need the cooperation both of the judiciary as well as the government. Let me just tell you one simple thing, which is nothing new. It's been discussed for at least for the last 30 to 40 years. Our population to judge ratio in India is very, very poor. If you compare the same ratio with America, India needs at least 10 times more judges than we have today, especially at the lower level. And although we are living in Delhi and big urban areas, kindly go to a Mofussil court. It is very difficult for a judge to work in that atmosphere. I'm sorry to say, but we must pay attention to those courts also and the conditions of the
fair point. But Suman ji,
no, 1 minute. I'll take 1 more minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
I fully agree that unless this system improves, we will remain low down in the ranking.
Okay, okay. Dushyant, you have the very onerous task because you are facing the same issues which you have to help solve, and yet you have to answer questions on behalf of those issues, all those issues as well. So now help us track this. Getting things done once the red carpet has already been rolled out. I've made my investment. I'm about to start my factory. Somebody has come and said you have violated 7 laws and is being shut. What do I do?
Sure. So let me give 3 quick points here. First is, what is that team? There is an Invest India in the center. There have to be equal teams. We have to give a seamless experience. It should not be that he goes to a state Y and then he says, okay, I got that experience there, but when I am here, it's a different world. It's just not the same country. This is a specific task which we have taken on ourselves. I've been working in it for 3 years, ensuring that we have the best practice state investment promotion agencies in each of the states. We brought in the World Bank as an IFC is a very good partner. They have done it in some other countries, and we really worked on that model in India.
Okay.
We do a whole lot of capacity building programs all the time. We are doing that. That's only one part of it. Jaijit talked about we being a facilitator, but there is somebody who has maybe the power in his hand. I want to, I did very initially talk about, this whole concept of the project development cells and the empowered group of secretaries. Very interestingly, what is happening there is that, in each of these ministries, for example, Ministry of Food Processing Industries, there is a very senior official, a joint secretary level official who will do troubleshooting for you. They will talk to the states in the last 2 months.
No, explain to me. Okay, I'm setting up a project and it's stuck, right? And I've been knocking on doors and not been able to solve it. So you're saying I can call up somebody at a joint secretary level?
Yes.
Who will say, okay, I will make the phone call. So I don't have to. I don't have to find my cousin's uncle who knows somebody who happens to be a joint secretary.
Right. You come to us, and then when I said, okay, we as facilitators are finding our hands tied, we will use that mechanism. So the PDC mechanism, the project development cells mechanism. So one of the clear roles is to come out with new investable projects which are already pre-cleared for certain number of approvals. That's one side. The second is troubleshooting. I am stuck. I am Mars from XYZ country. This is the project. I was going to go live in 3 months. I am stuck here. Can you help me?
Okay, there's a helpline. Okay, there's a helpline, Invest India helpline, and not particularly Invest India helpline, but something like that. Okay, several people want to make interjections. Tanmoy ji, then Jaijit, and then I'll go to get Dr. Chanana back in. Tanmoy ji, go ahead.
Rishabh, my viewpoint is that India must look at how we can disintermediate government. To me, the most effective state which runs in India today has the least number of visitors to its secretariat. That's the way that we have to go forward in the country.
Correct.
We can't have more and more people coming and following up with government, because the government is not meant for a 1.3 billion population construct. The government is probably meant for a population construct of India in the 1960s. So with the use of technology, we have to ensure that we become as faceless, as touchless, as disintermediated as we can with the use of technology. We cannot handle 1.3 billion people with the construct.
And a lot of this has to become, as he mentioned, we need to figure out at a mass scale what can be automated. If banks can do it, I am automatically cleared for a loan because I have a credit history up to a certain amount. That loan processing is now done automatically because I have the automatic clearance. I can get my money in 10 seconds.
So
these logics do apply.
10 seconds, Rishabh. Therefore, India has to think of why there should be a digital process for every single interaction with government. It has to be digital by
I agree,
default.
and that's a good example. I have been a beneficiary of, I could not believe it happened, that you press a button without speaking to anyone, you get a loan disbursed in your account in 10 seconds. I did not think it's possible, but it is possible, it's done. Okay, we've got about 12 minutes left. Jaijit to make an interjection, and I'm going to talk to Chanana, then Sumanji, and I'm not going to leave you guys before we see where we can take this together. Jaijit, go ahead.
Just want to put the point with a little example that government is little different from a bank when it comes to businesses. It's similar when it comes to consumers, but very different when it comes to businesses. Let me take the example of this large, one of the largest automotive investments that had stitched together about 2.5 years ago, worth 2.5 billion with about 25 companies as part of the ecosystem, all being brought in. I'll just take one example. They needed to have an ROB, a rail over bridge, so that the moment the cars are built, they can go over the overbridge rather than waiting for the trains to pass by. Very simple point, was part of the agreement. It took a huge amount of effort for the government to actually build it. It did not happen till about 6 months back, whereas the production went live on April 2018. And for 1.5 years, the ROB was never built. Now, how do you do contract enforcement under these circumstances? And it goes beyond what Invest India is doing. We all appreciate what Invest India is doing. It's a massive transformation from what we were 5 years back.
Jaijit, I know it's anecdotal, but I'm sure many entrepreneurs watching this will share the frustration, but will also recognize the change. And I said, Dushyant is in the difficult position of he has to face the same frustration because he's trying to convince the same people, but he's also answerable to us right now. Dr. Chanana, in a very practical sense, we all want to do this. We have consensus that we are heading to do this. We sort of know what we want to do. We sort of know how to do it. It now comes up that is this becoming cultural? Do we as a country and as every single official want to see trade and investment promotion for our benefit? Are you seeing a sign of that?
Okay, so Rishabh, the larger point that I have is the ease of doing business agenda and the so-called whole of government agenda needs to go together. Right now, if your question is what can be done as the next step, we have done phenomenal work on government to citizen, government to business services. I think we now need to go back on government to government, that's the G2G part and G2E part, and make it happen in terms of, and some states are already using it. Say for example, Andhra is using it, the budgeting as the means to connect different departments. Moment I have this layer and siloed this thing, the ease of doing business vision that I'm
government to government. Government to government. Great idea. Okay. I'm going to ask a question to Suman ji, and then let's open it up. We've got 10 minutes, and I do want to take some actionables away from this so that we have something that we made progress on. Suman ji, interpretation, and that's a field of expertise where rules come in as much as laws come in, is a major issue because anybody can choose to interpret it one way. You can have a government that changes or an officer that changes and can interpret something in the other way. Can this actually be curtailed or some human failures we have to make room for?
Well, to a large extent, it has been curtailed, let me tell you. You have to give credit even to the new Companies Act and to the many regulations. For example, GST, initially there were hiccups, but if you see the various notifications and today, there's a lot of clarity. One point I would like to make is, we have to make each district accountable. Every officer of the district must be held accountable, even for the municipal corporation. Because at the end of the day, the states can be blamed by the center, but the states will then blame the district and the municipal corporation. Now, how do you make the districts and the municipal corporation accountable? That's the vital question. And I would be very happy if Dushyant ji can convince the government to roll out a red carpet, even for the small individual and the MSME.
Yes.
But those are the people for whom the government exists. So they have to be looked after. And the only way you can look after is in a spirit of trust. The government is there for the people is not there for the government.
Bang on. Bang on. So we have to find now some things to get excited about. Tanmoy ji, as we end the end phase of this conversation, what do we get excited about, or what can actually be done?
No, I clearly see tremendous progress ahead, and India is going to evolve as the track record is through all the bumps on the way. We have to bring in a concept of whole of government digital collaboration. We have to break the walls of the silos which are there in a physical government form. We are now talking about a digital government. So that DNA mindset transformation has to take place, and it has to be driven top down. It has to.
Can you explain this for us, sir? What would be a solution which would be part technological, part mental, and part approach?
No, how did we all adopt an ATM machine from a bank? The mahol was created by the banks, Rishabh, and everybody adopted. Nobody trained my driver how to use an ATM. Similarly, a digital environment collaborative with every government official having a digital signature and logging on to an application that collaborates amongst ministries and departments right through state, center and local government is the way forward.
Okay. So we are getting consensus that the issues of focus, troubleshooting focus has to be now as much local and state as it at the central level. We are getting consensus that technology is part solution, but the technology should be used to cut down government to government, department to department silos more than anything else. Jaijit, what's there to be excited about?
I think establishment of contract enforcement through commercial courts is hanging for a long time. We need to speed the implementation, accelerate the implementation of commercial courts. And second, move towards capturing data at source and then letting the rules be provided by the government through its government systems. For example, if I'm registering a contract, rather than buying an e-stamp paper, the entire contract should be e, and it should be registered in the government systems, and the court should take cognizance of those non-reputable contracts. So those are the few things that we need to do, basically focused on contract enforcement using legislations and using technology.
Okay, Dr. Chanana, I'll leave the last few minutes for Dushyant because I know he'll be wanting to speak on a lot of things. Dr. Chanana, go ahead. What are the things to get excited about, sir? Actionables that we can actually do?
So 2-3 things, Rishabh. One, given what we have done in the last 3-4 years, absolutely a good reason that why we should be optimistic for the times to come. It's not that things are a bit pessimistic. So one. Second, in terms of geographic coverage, I think we have spoken enough of metros as the reference, places for EODB or other. I think we now need to focus on the tier 2 and tier 3 cities where the majority of action happens, and that's where the capacity building, the culture building, the issue actually is expected to generate a much faster result. And third, as Tanmoy rightly said, technology has to be preceded by structural, by capacity building, and that to me is the core enabler for whatever we are talking in terms of the single window or otherwise.
Okay, so now the reason that this is being had with you, the public today, is that these conversations go on. It's not like government and Invest India and all the people sitting on the panel don't talk to each other and they only speak on Newsx. But it's important for you to get an education of where the conversation is, where it's come from, and of course where it's headed. So Dushyant, you have the same kind of problem a doctor doing a polio drive has in this country. You're trying to deliver a dose that's good for the patient, it's good for the family, but they still need to be convinced that they need to receive that dose. What is exciting you that gets you up in the morning and that doesn't kill you under frustration?
Absolutely. 2 quick points. One is that, I'll just take on from what Tanmay said. It's basically a combination. We see 2 things. Technology being the foundation. I think it's very clear. It's not only this project. I have a GIS project also, a National Land Bank, which we are working on, but technology is one. Number 2, moving away. I remember Honorable Prime Minister on the day of, Startup India, he said that we just want to move away and let startups do their bit. So states getting into that thought process, bringing in norms where there are no inspections required, let's say for 3 years, such things, move away and bring in technology where required. That's one. Number 2, government to government is a beautiful word. Jaijit talked about it. I do at least, I would say at least 1 to 2 meetings every day. We are sitting across the state government and we are having these very interesting conversations with them. And it's like, what's in it for you? That sort of a stuff.
Fair enough. No, fair enough.
There is value in each other. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, no, should be. We run out of time. The process conceptualization is that we want to get excited about this, that this is doable. Because if we all get frustrated with the problems, the chapter is sort of closed, that India can't be done, which is a reminder of what all we've achieved. We are in a transformative zone already, but that does not take away reality checks. Now, some of those reality checks admittedly will be anecdotal, that it might not be generic and there might be improvements that are happening generally. Some of the good stories will also be anecdotal, but it's the approach that changes, the may we help you approach. You change that approach, the private sector and the entrepreneurs of this country and all these people sitting right here on the panel will solve all the other problems. The government won't have to worry about them. What is a better technological platform? They know better than government does. How to generate revenue and wealth? Entrepreneurs know better than what government does. what are better solutions that are out there need to be presented to government. And all of you watching back home, you need to find opportunity even here. So if you're seeing a problem that you're facing with government and you think that maybe you have a technological or process-led solution that can solve it, why don't you pick up the phone and call Invest India that I can solve this G2G problem that you guys are having. I have a better plan, a better idea. If you all get involved, maybe it's possible. Gentlemen, my great thanks that you had such a candid conversation, and a lot of back end has gone into putting this together. Let's not leave it at one conversation. Let's keep coming back. You have a friend here in Newsx to have these very cogent and serious conversations that are very required in this country. My thanks to all of you and to Dushyant for braving out and questions from everyone.
For more such videos, subscribe to the Newsx YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.